Hi there, welcome to What and Series 16 and number 19, and we're continuing in chapter 41 of Genesis, looking at verses 33 to start with. And it says this: "Now therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Then that food shall be as a reserve for the land for 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine." Okay, this is a response to the dream that Pharaoh had, remember. But notice it says, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man. To this point, Joseph gave Pharaoh knowledge, telling him what would happen, as revealed in the dreams that were a message from God. Now Joseph began to apply wisdom to that knowledge. Something that we've got to learn, isn't it? Not just know the facts, but know how to use them. There is an important difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge tells us what is going on. Wisdom tells us what to do with it. Knowledge is the diagnosis. Wisdom is directed to the cure. Knowledge is good and necessary, but it isn't quite enough. The world has a lot more knowledge these days than wisdom. Today's scientists, poets, politicians, and all of the rest can often see what the problems are, and we do that too, sitting in our lounge rooms, watching the news. We identify the problems. But true wisdom is something different, isn't it? And in this situation, true wisdom sees that Jesus is the answer. Notice it says there, let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. In his God-given wisdom, Joseph saw that this great coming crisis needed proper administration. The problem had to be understood first. The goal and the vision was to meet the goal that had to be formulated. The people had to be put in the right place, officers over the land. They had to understand the big vision and their role in it. Someone had to make sure it all operated according to plan. The work had to be measured. Notice there's actually a percentage there of how much had to be gathered. God would use a man to put all that in place. It wouldn't happen by what we would normally think of as a miracle, but it would happen. And notice it says there 1/5 means 20%. Now, they were being taxed. Some ancient sources suggest that Pharaoh normally took 10% of the grain in Egypt as a tax anyway. If this was true, then Joseph was proposing just a doubling of the taxes over the next 7 years. I say just a doubling. That sounds a bit hairy, doesn't it? That the land may not perish during the famine. Now, this is the message from God through Pharaoh's dreams, that there was a crisis to come. If they didn't prepare, then the kingdom of Egypt could have finished, could have perished during that famine. This was an urgent call to action. What we're looking at now is the fact that God would meet the need through a man. God always works through men performing tasks on earth. Have you noticed that? He uses us. He uses people to do his will. In verses 37 and 38, Pharaoh perceives the presence of God's Spirit in Joseph. And he says, "So the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, 'Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God?'" The advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh. In other words, Pharaoh got it. Pharaoh understood that Joseph not only had the right interpretation of the dream, but also the right advice to respond to the message from heaven. What he was looking for was a man who had the Spirit of God. Pharaoh had access to plenty of priests and magicians and holy men. What he didn't have until Joseph was a man with the Spirit of God. This made Joseph stand out among the other people. Yep. And this is the first mention in the Bible of the Holy Spirit being on a man. Notably, this concerns practical matters. Joseph didn't have to preach a sermon or lead a prayer for Pharaoh to see that the Spirit was on him. He could see it in his character, in his message, in the knowledge, particularly in his wisdom, but I dare say also in his humility. The presence and power of the Holy Spirit can be seen in very, very practical ways. In the character and humility of God's people is a primary one. It goes on in verses 39 to 41. And we find here that Joseph himself is promoted to that position that he suggested, to be the second in charge of the whole kingdom of Egypt. It says in verse 39, "Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one discerning and as wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you.' And Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'See, I have set you over the land of Egypt.'" Oh, this is mind-blowing, isn't it? Notice it says, "Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and as wise as you." This is a firm indication that Pharaoh wanted Joseph to be the one to carry through his interpretation. He thought, okay, he's got the idea. He's got the connection with God. This is going to happen this way. It may have actually surprised Joseph. We don't know. It said, "You shall be over my house." Joseph had the knowledge and wisdom, but Pharaoh had a choice. He chose to give Joseph authority over everything. He didn't say, "Thanks for the advice, I'll handle it." Pharaoh wisely surrendered to Joseph's knowledge, wisdom, and authority. That's a great thing for leaders to learn, isn't it? That we need the people who we work with to be able to be specialists in their field. Joseph would be over Pharaoh's house and his personal business. Joseph would rule over the people of Egypt according to Joseph's word. Joseph would be second in the kingdom behind Pharaoh. Joseph would have authority over all the land of Egypt. Joseph may have seemed like he was an overnight success, but in truth, this journey from the pit to the pinnacle had taken at least 13 hard years. This part of Joseph's story reminds us of some important principles regarding promotion and advancement. Promotion and advancement come from the Lord. This is not to say that hard work and preparation and good habits and family background and other human things don't contribute to success. Yet, even for those people with those giftings and abilities from God, we should remember that, realistically speaking, God determines where we head. Promotion and advancement are never enough without the Lord and can never be promoted or advanced to the place where we stop needing Jesus. That is a really important thing for us to remember. We can never get so big and so important that God is no longer important in our lives. Jesus received the ultimate promotion or advancement. Joseph's path from the humble servant to the prisoner to powerful ruler becomes a prophecy of Jesus himself. Philippians 2 and verses 5 to 11 describe that ultimate promotion. And it's an amazing passage. We will look at that over the next few weeks as we continue to look at where Joseph is heading. Bless you.